Victoria Lewis, and welcome to today's Dojo. We've got some tenured agents here with us. We've got Stephen Grip and we've got Brad with us here. So we're going to have a lot of good input today. Today's topic is OEP, and we're talking about the Advantage Plan OEP, the one that goes from January 1st through the 31st of March. And that's where you can do two things. You can either, if a client wants to go from an Advantage Plan, slide to another Advantage Plan, or if someone wants to go from an Advantage Plan and revert back to original Medicare with a drug plan. So those are typically the two types of clients that we're dealing with during this particular enrollment period. So a couple of, a few different types of clients we're looking at, their different needs when people are calling and expressing what their needs are. A common one I have is somebody who maybe missed the fall enrollment period and they said, oopsies, I thought I had till all of December, right, to finish this. All they hear sometimes is October through December on TV, and they just key into December and they just assume that means they have all year to do that. And they call on the 16th wanting to reshop their Advantage Plan. And it's like, nope, it's Johnny come lately. It's a little too late to do that, right? But they do have a little bit of a second chance where January through March, they can do that. So that's a common type of client that will call in wanting to or needing to take advantage of the OEP enrollment period. But Stephen, what other type of needs do you see for someone who is reserved for the January through March OEP that we can help them with?
Well, historically speaking, and this will probably go into Brad's example, the Medicare Advantage open enrollment period was designed for people on TRICARE or people on VA who wanted to try out civilian coverage, who felt that they wanted to go back to the VA or go back to TRICARE. Now, they never had a Medicare Advantage open enrollment period. They had to stay with that plan for the year. Well, now they designed this open enrollment period to allow you to basically cancel out your Advantage Plan and go back to original Medicare, or in this case, go back to the VA. So it's a lot of times, I've dealt with a couple clients who, it's unfortunate they talk to these people, these veterans, they have issues where, they go to their VA clinic or they go to their VA pharmacist and they may be far away, or sometimes it may be subpar service. It's different all across the United States with VA coverage. It's different for every person that has this plan. So what the mindset of these new, agents, they're like, oh, let's get you an Advantage Plan, not knowing how Advantage Plans work in conjunction with the VA. So what happened was they're like, okay, I want to try VA. I'm assuming I can still use my VA or I can use TRICARE. And, when you are talking about the difference between, Medicare Advantage Plans, which are civilian coverage, and VA coverage, they cross streams and it can be very, very complicated, and it can disrupt a lot of services that these clients that have VA can use. So the Medicare Advantage open enrollment period really allows these VA recipients to say, look, I just want to get back to the VA. I don't want to have the civilian coverage. It just doesn't work. Someone put me with a prescription drug plan with this, and it's messing up my service with VA drug coverage. So it's a lot of disenrollment, but I'm going to turn it to Brad in just a second. What it really allows us to have genuine conversations with is, look, we don't want to take away your civilian coverage. Okay, what we want to do is still give you that civilian coverage option. We just don't want to take away, we don't want to put on additional networks that are going to limit you. So what we want to do is we want to allow you to have your VA coverage, but also if you do need to go to a civilian service, we want to allow you to have Medicare, and we also don't want you to pick up that 20% that you have to. So I'll just turn it to you, Brad. You can talk about this. You just dealt with this today.
Exactly. We deal with this every year around this time. A lot of people just pull the trigger. They'll call a number on the TV or whatever. They don't realize what they're getting into. They don't realize that they've lost their standard Medicare. And in this particular case, I told the client, look, this is going to get very messy for you, because the VA, they're going to see, okay, your Advantage Plan's primary coverage. They may not pay for your procedure. They're going to push it off on the Advantage plan, you're going to be subjected to the $4,400 out of pocket that you signed up for. And make a long story short, he's begging me to get his supplemental back in January under trial right. Don't even have to go to a high deductible one either. But this time of year, and I can remember during March through or January through March 31st, where they could cancel their Advantage plan and have one shot at a drug plan. That was it. It was not like you can get another drug plan. It wasn't an open enrollment.
Right.
But now they changed the game a little bit, and this is a very important time of the year for us because for the most of December, I've been dealing with just damage control for the exact same thing. People, they want to save money, of course. That zero premium looks very attractive. And for some people, it can work out great, but generally it's not a very good option. And, we have to get that coverage back. But I engaged Stephen this morning because I've never had this situation where he was primarily using the VA for most of his stuff. And, I told the client, I said, I asked him directly, how's that going to work with your VA? And he's like, well, I have no idea, and he had to leave to go to a meeting and gave me some time to research it. But these are things that come up. There's a lot of straggly ends on these things, these Advantage plans that people don't realize that they're getting themselves into. And especially when you're combining VA coverage, you really want that standard Medicare option, so you're going from a governmental agency to another governmental agency, and it just works smoother for the client. But there's so much to talk about with these things, all the little ins and outs, and the trouble that people can get into that they don't realize. And things happen. People fall, break a hip, wind up in the hospital, spending hundreds of days out or hundreds of dollars a day out of pocket, for coverage, and they want to get their supplemental back. But, I'm glad I had time to do that little conversation, and we had some time to collaborate on that before I called the client back, because it's messy. And, I quite frankly never heard of an MA only plan without drug. I know they existed, but I didn't know in the case of VA that's something that was available, which he doesn't have. He didn't sign up for that.
Right. Yeah. The thing about MA only plans, if you look into them, they have like a tinge of military tone to it. So like there's the
freedom and the honor.
Patriot plan,
right.
the Humana honor plan. Now, I don't want to take away from, I know that they can get messy, but Medicare Advantage plans, when it comes to situations like this, they can work to the client's favor, because when you look at a client that has VA coverage, first of all, thank you for your service, and you have earned that coverage, and it is great coverage. But with any type of government coverage, there's limitations to it. It may not be as good as civilian coverage. It may not have the services. A lot of times, and a lot of clients that I've had VA coverage, they really don't like to go to the VA unless there is like a major catastrophic event, because they'll be able to take care of that procedure. But when it comes to daily visits or checkups, or let's say you're having some issues and you want to go to the doctor to get it checked out, well, in some cases, the VA clinic is 60 miles away.
Exactly.
You have to set an appointment that's 2 weeks out. It's not saying it's all the time, but it can become very inconvenient for someone with VA coverage. Yes, you're concerned with your cost, but that could be inconvenient. These Medicare Advantage plans are designed to say, look, you can use civilian coverage. You can go adhere to the network, If if an agent is doing it right, they're going to do thorough research on getting them into this MA only plan to see if it works with them. To say, look, let's see what doctors you see. Are those doctors in that network? What type of services do you need? Do you have specialists? We want to make sure that if we put you into an MA only plan, that's going to give you the benefits and the coverage that you need, while still not interrupting your medicines. Because VA coverage because you can call the pharmacy, you can get it mailed to you. It's far better than civilian coverage.
Correct.
So when you're doing that transition, you want to educate the client, but you also want to know what you're talking about. So when we get to this period now, this January 1st, it's stage 1, damage control. You know, we're not just doing damage control for the vets, but going back to you, we're doing a lot of damage control with people who have been put in Medicare Advantage plans unannounced, you know, because the way that the AEP is, you can get enrolled into a plan every single day. It's the last one. What is it? The last one in, first one out?
Yeah.
Yeah. So December 7th, whatever's on your record, December 7th, that's the plan that you're getting for 2023.
That's right.
So we're talking to all these people and it's like, hey, I enrolled in this plan, you know, this plan A. What plan am I on? Oh, you're on plan double Z. You're like, what? I never enrolled in that plan. I have no idea, you know? So a lot of it is not just damage control for, you know, VA clients, but it's damage control for the population that have been enrolled in plans, you know, without their permission.
Yeah, I would say OEP is, gosh, I would just say big time for fixing oopsies and boo-boos, right? Whether that be from the client making an incorrect decision or confusing themselves, or fixing an oopsie from an agent that, you know, either they didn't know what they were putting them into, or they made a mistake, or they mistakenly put a client into a plan that was not going to be beneficial to them. Right. I had it right before the end of AEP. I did have a gentleman call me because he had switched so many times before he got to me. He was just confused beyond belief because he said, well, I received an Aetna card and I received an AARP card. And he said, I thought we did Humana. I haven't gotten a Humana card yet. I said, well, you know what? We did sign you up for Humana, and as far as I'm aware, unless you did anything after that, Humana is the one that's going to stick because it's the last one you did. But I said, you know what? Let's just triple check that you didn't actually get into something else. And so I looked him up in CMS, and sure enough, the Humana plan that I had signed him up for was what was going to stick. But he had done so much changing before he got to me that he was so confused because he was getting cards from everybody, right? And some people just do so much, they just confuse the heck out of themselves, and we have to sort it out. Luckily, he got it squared away before AEP ended, but if he had waited till after that and was just super confused and wanted to, you know, go back to a plan he thought he was in, OEP would be the time to do it in the early part of the year. But so many people will get themselves into a plan with another agent that it's not explained very well, or the agent doesn't do the due diligence and make sure their doctors are accepted in the plan. And then they go to the doctor the first of the year and they get a big bill, or they get told, you know, you're going to be a cash payer because your coverage we don't accept your coverage. And it's a big shock to them. And they're scrambling around trying to find a fix for it. And OEP is the time to do that.
You know, another thing that happens, you know, the agent doesn't explain, you need to cancel your supplement. And we find that all the time. They'll go the whole year, they've been paying for a supplement, and they think this is an addition to, you know, they're just getting extra goodies. You know, what they don't realize, they've eliminated their standard Medicare, and they've been paying for something that's not even active.
Now, you know, surprising, you know, when you think about AEP, the season, for every one of us, there's 25 of people who are hired on just to submit applications. Like, they are coming in, they are seasonal.
They're the turn and burn.
They're the turn and burn people that are just trained to hear what they want, press buttons, and submit so they get their bonuses. And that's how companies make their money, because they get the commissions that come from Medicare so they can make their profits while they can pay these minimal bonuses, which are still exorbitant because they're doing so much business. But then in the cleanup season, these clients are calling back saying, hey, this is not what I enrolled in. I wanted, you know, Humana HMO. I'm in this Humana PPO, and I have this exorbitant, you know, max out of pocket, and my doctor's not in network. Now I got to pay out of pocket costs. You know, and I have VA coverage, and now I got a MAPD. Why am I paying for drugs when I get it for free at the VA? What's going on here? It's like, well, you talk to a seasonal. And you know, it's so funny too. Most of the time, I don't know, maybe it's a client being embarrassed, which it could be, but a lot of times they don't remember who they talked to.
Oh yeah, the guy I had on the phone today, all he did was apologize for 15 minutes. That he didn't talk to me first. You know, and that's what happens. You know, people pull the trigger, they see free, or I'm going to get extra goodies, and boom, and it's too late. You know, now we're in this little period here where we
Right.
can't do anything.
Right.
And thank God we do have, January 1st and March 31st to fix things.
Mhm.
Right.
But oh my goodness, I mean, the trouble people get themselves into,
Mhm.
and we hear it all the time. I'm healthy. I just want to try it out. Next thing you know, they slip and fall and in the hospital, laid up for weeks, paying hundreds of
Mhm.
dollars a day, for coverage. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah. Well, a lot of times with that too, where these people that want to try out Advantage plans, they're like, I'm healthy, and then they go, not even for a wellness check, but they're just like, oh, I got to get some amoxicillin for like a bacteria infection, or I want to get some allergy medication. And they go to their doctor and it's like, oh yeah, your doctor's not covered in this plan. They're like, what? I've been seeing this doctor forever. Yeah, well, this is an Advantage plan, which is a limited network. And unfortunately, your doctor's not in this plan. But congratulations on getting your Part B give back of $40.
Right.
I'm glad you're saving money, but now you can't see the doctor you've been seeing for 20 years. So it's like, that's what the problem is with these seasonal agents, is that they don't do a needs analysis. They just hear, what do you want? Here's what you want. Now I get my bonus. They're not doing the proper need. They're not doing the proper questioning.
Because if you are, an excellent agent and doing your due diligence, you're warning people of worst possible case scenario, and you have to. And it's not to scare people, but it's to let people know that if in some event something really terrible or expensive were to happen, this is what you would be on the hook for, and it may or may not be something to be worried about.
Well, the myth of Medicare Advantage plans is that you don't pay for anything. And that is wrong. They're not free plans.
I tell people you get what you pay for.
The truth is...
Cheese in the rat trap.
That's right. The cheese in the rat trap's always free.
Yeah. Yep. The truth is that you just don't pay for anything right now. Mm-hmm. You pay as you go. I say this every time, but a lot of times people don't pay attention to the paperwork. Like, for example, and Frank and I talked about this, the way that, because these Advantage plans are they're identical. All they could do to compete against each other is just add this additional benefit here, or add this additional benefit here. I'll give you, instead of $40 Part B give back, I'll give you $45.
Right.
Or, I'll give you $3,500 in dental, but you got to choose a network. But don't worry about that. $3,500, fantastic. What they tend to forget is when there's certain services that they need, like going to be admitted into the hospital, or like the one that kills me is CT scans or MRI exams.
Oh,
Yeah. I suggest all agents look at the fine print when it comes to tests, because that's where these plans kind of make their money back. Because think about it, when you go and you go see a doctor, the doctor's like, who are you? Oh, I have a problem. Okay, I'm not going to do anything until I see what's wrong. So go get some MRIs. And they will charge you $200 per MRI.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I had one client last year, who's like, yeah, I need an MRI, and it was $400 copay. And it's like, I don't have that. So guess what the doctor did? I'm not doing it.
Right.
Or sometimes because it's health management, some of them, they'll say, well, you can't get an MRI until you get an x-ray, or you have to do a certain course of action. You can't do what you think you need to do, what's best for you. You have to play by our rules.
Yeah.
And it ends up being more expensive and forcing you to pay more money.
Just like step therapy on drugs.
Mm-hmm. You go.
Try these other cheap things first before we'll let you do the expensive thing.
Right.
There's so many limitations, and seniors hate run around and paperwork. I usually tell them, look, if you've ever dealt with a cable company, this is like a cable company times 10.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
You call the
like
insurance company, you're going to talk to somebody in some other country that doesn't speak English, you'll get disconnected, and then good luck trying to call the agent that sold it to you and try to get answers.
Yeah.
It's a lot of headache and a lot of run around. You're trying to chase money for the doctors, and that's exactly what they don't want. What they do see is, oh, my friend has it, he recommends it, he loves it, it's worked great for him, so I'm going to listen to my friend instead of you, who is the expert, and next thing you know, they get stuck into a bad situation and they regret it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that all Advantage plans are bad in certain situations, they work great.
Yeah.
But, you have to match what the client's needs are to the plan. What are they really looking to achieve?
Mhm.
Yeah, but you have
What are the specific things that agents need to look out for going into this period?
Yeah, that's what I was going to get into. So when we enter January 1st to March 31st, we are looking for, plans that have been misled. They have been misguided into these plans.
Right.
But what we really have to look for is these are opportunities to talk about Medicare supplements.
Mhm.
That's the key conversation, because now they're frustrated that their plans are limited. Now they're going to start talking about, okay, how can I eliminate this problem forever?
Right.
I'm really tired. I'm a healthy person. I've been juggling around networks, and talking to these new agents who come from those, turn and burn factories, they don't really know how to talk about supplements, but we do.
Mhm.
So I know you've had many, many conversations with these people that are coming off of these Advantage Plan mishaps and saying, look, you probably have never been told this, surprisingly, but have you ever thought about Medicare supplements? Do you know what they are? Do you know how they work? Well, first and foremost, Medicare supplements are connected to Original Medicare, which are non-managed.
Mhm.
So you don't have to worry about any of this anymore. You want a dental plan? We'll talk dental later. What kind of service do you need for your teeth? But right now, you don't want to be paying for bills anymore. You don't want to be dealing with networks anymore. Let's talk about how supplements work in this particular situation. First, we got to see if you're healthy. Oh, you're healthy? I highly recommend, and then just have conversations with them. It's so funny talking to these new agents coming in. They're so intimidated by Medicare supplements. All they know in their mind is that they're expensive. And it's like, well, you don't know how they work, So that's what we really need to prepare agents for, is to have, conversations, not about premium or any, cost, but about coverage and how Medicare works, how it's a non-managed care plan, and how supplements tie into those.
I think it's a time for just listening, being a good listener and listening for key words. I have a gentleman, I have him on the calendar for January because he says, no, I have it all taken care of. I said, well, really, like, what do you have? Great, I'm so glad. Well, it turns out, long story short, him and his wife have Advantage plans. And they're paying $200 a month for their Advantage plans, and they each have a $6,000 annual deductible. And if you know anything about this stuff, it's like red flags all over the place. And all I could say to him without, I had to stop myself from just having an outburst of,
Right.
vulgarities, like, what are you doing? I just wanted to say, obviously he got some bad advice, to his, his defense. But he said, look, I got into that plan. Maybe it's not great, but I got into it because I told the guy I wanted something that would let me go anywhere I wanted to in the country. I said, find me an Advantage plan that I can go any state I want to. I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but you actually, you had it. You're like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. You had it in you the whole time. You had it in you in Original Medicare. You had it. You didn't have to go looking for that. Original Medicare is what you worked for your whole life. If you saw your little check, you'd see every month, every paycheck, something was being taken out for Medicare. You paid for that. You already have it. You didn't have to go searching for it. And he's like, wow, are you serious? Tell me more. And so I said, gosh, for the half the, much less than you're paying now, you can revert back to what you worked for your whole life with a supplemental and get exactly what you were looking for, that nationwide Medicare network that you want. And you'll have way better coverage, but you have to listen to those key words that people are saying to you, what their problem is, why they don't like their current coverage, or why they got into what they're in now. You just have to listen for that. You have to prod them more. You have to know the right questions to ask and the right way to ask it to get that information out of them. Because they're obviously, if they're clicking on something that's alerting us that they need help, or they're calling in, that must mean there's something wrong with their plan, or they're still not quite happy with what they have, or they're still not feeling quite settled with what they have. So you just have to listen to them and find out what it is. And that can be a common thing. Also, that time is people will, because that's when the ads start up again on TV, and there's the misconception that, oh, new plans are coming out again. But that kind of speaks to, if this is your existing client, if you can prep them well enough, do your due diligence, which is telling them, look, plans that have come out for next year, they've already come out. This is it. There's no new anything else, no matter what you see on TV, because people who are not our clients will call in saying they have an Advantage plan and they got set up in the fall, but they're wanting to, now that there's a new enrollment period, they want to look for the new plans. Well, you just kind of have to dispel those myths that actually know the plans that, there's not new plans just because it's January now suddenly. But yes, use it as an opportunity to make sure that they did get into the best plan for them in the fall. But it's right. It's key for listening to what it is that they're needing. Why would they want to make a change, possibly back to original Medicare?
I think, we really have to emphasize, building value. A lot of people, and I'll use this exact verbiage. I say, a lot of people will attribute the coverage to their monthly premium, which is certainly important, but you have to look at the big picture. What are you getting for zero? When you had a group plan through work, you're probably paying hundreds of dollars a month, maybe close to $1,000 a month for subpar coverage. You have to look at every aspect of it. If you have a heart attack, what's going to be the process? What's it going to cost you? Are you going to be limited to doctors? What's your maximum out of pocket? With a supplemental plan, you don't have to worry about it. You're not going to lose the farm. And that's what you're paying for. Tremendous amount of security. Sure, you have a monthly fee for that, but it's small compared to what it's going to do. That's the best, for the average American, this is the best level of coverage, the highest level of coverage that you can get, Medicare and a supplemental plan. Unless you're a retired general or a politician, it doesn't get any better than that. And they're going to cover everything. There's no maximum limits. So it comes down to an education process, because a lot of times people haven't done their homework. They don't know how to do their homework. The information that's out there, it's designed to be confusing, quite frankly, and I make the statement quite often, if you can understand it, somebody probably didn't do their job. I mean, it's intentionally made confusing. And that's our job, to unravel the rat's nest and explain to them exactly what goes on. And this is why we have a lot of recurring clients. We keep our clients, because we do educate them. We do tell them the truth about what's really going on and the dangers of other options. Anytime that you're, lowering your premium down, you're assuming more risk. People have financial issues now. I get it. Everybody, you have to be able to eat. Well, let's take a look at high deductible plans, where instead of paying $150 a month, now you're paying $50 a month. You have a potentially higher out of pocket if you get hospitalized, but at least you're going to be protected, and it's going to be capped, and it's going to be standardized. You're going to be able to see the doctors that you need to see, go to the hospitals that you're going to need to go to, and you won't be limited, and you won't have an insurance company telling who can see and what they're going to cover. Because if Medicare approves it, the supplemental plan by law has to pay the balance of the bill. And it's just a much safer way to do it, and this time of year, I spend a lot of time doing that exact thing. I mean, just educating the client. They don't realize what they've done, and they don't find out until it's too late, and they're in the hospital and they can't afford the copays. So.
Right. No, I absolutely agree with you that we are having to kind of correct incorrect information that they've been told by other agents, whether it just be that, and it was just truly an agent that just didn't know, didn't educate themselves, or that intentionally misled them. Also, a third thing I'm having to deal with is clients who were not given all the options, that a certain option was conveniently left out. I'm dealing with clients, very soon we'll be dealing with clients on both ends of the spectrum. The gentleman I told you that him and his wife are paying $200 a piece for their Advantage plans. After discussing it, he said, well, he mentioned how the agent was a local agent, and his wife said she was really great, and it turns out she didn't even give him the option of a supplement. He didn't know there was such a thing. All he knew was his Advantage, because that's the only option she gave them. And in so many words, I had to say, as nice as I could. Well, then she must not be that great of an agent if she didn't give you all of your options. Because now that I've given you both of your options and been very clear and straightforward with it, I think it's you see that it's very, very clear that supplemental is the superior product, the superior coverage, and it makes much more sense. I didn't even have to sway you one way or the other. I said, would you say that's an accurate assessment of this conversation? He says, absolutely. He says, you are right. You didn't try to sell me a thing yet. You just educated me, and I already know which way I want to go. And I want to talk to you January 1. And so that's going to be the deal. Another lady that actually I was able to help during AEP was a lady who the people she spoke to didn't give her Advantage plan as an option, which is odd, an unusual thing to hear. She was a lady who was happened to still be in her open enrollment period. And I called her. She was one of my T65. She was about a 6th round call and pretty much thought that was a goner, but she answered on the 6th call and talked to her a little bit. And she said, oh, no, I already found out I can't afford insurance. I've already looked into all this stuff. And I said, well, what do you mean you can't afford insurance? There's stuff that doesn't cost anything. Surely you can afford that. And she says, no, there's not. And long story short, we talked to her and in just, finding out her conversations she'd had with other agents, which I asked her, what kind of conversations have you been having? Let's hear it. And she, for some reason, she said the person she talked to said the only option is supplemental, which I said, it is an option. It is the most recommended option if it's in the budget at all, if you can fit it at all. But there are the Advantage plan options. And she said, well, my gosh, she didn't qualify for Medicaid, yet she couldn't afford a supplement, even the GHD. It was just not in the budget. And she just thought that that's all there was. And I said, well, you know what? I'd rather you, instead of going without insurance or anything, at least find an Advantage plan. And luckily in her state, the Advantage plan options were very, very good. We did a side-by-side comparison, and actually, it was very competitive, and compared to a supplemental. So I felt good. We checked her doctors, her meds, and I explained all the details of the plan and make sure she was protected, and even went through a worst case scenario, what she'd be looking for out of pocket. And it was going to be a 0 premium. And she was very healthy. But she said, yeah, in the event of something really expensive, at least I know what to save up for. And that could be doable in the future. And she was so thankful because she just couldn't believe that nobody had given her that option. I get it. It's true. The supplemental, you will probably make more money off of it as an agent. It's harder to sell. That's why I was surprised to hear that, the money, the commission is the only thing I can suspect is why they didn't want to even offer the Advantage plan. But my God, I'd rather have somebody leave with something rather than nothing. Let them just go without, really. So,
Yeah, I think it really comes down to discovery and melding the plan in with the client's needs, and we make the decision. You don't want the client, okay, here's your 10 options. Which one do you want? That's
too overwhelming.
All a mess there.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to find out what they need, what's their situation, how's their health, things run in the family, whatever. We make the determination, okay, this is the best plan for you. And in certain areas of the country, Advantage plans are great. These villages in Florida, for instance, they have, all the doctors in the village take the Advantage plan. They never leave the village, and life is great.
And some of them are the snowbird plans where you can go from one state to Florida back and forth, and there is the network there.
And people like those, plans. And all their friends have it. Same thing with Hawaii. You're on an island and have all the doctors. But for the most part of the country, especially rural areas, it's not a good thing. And we have to weigh the pros and cons each way. But generally, I mean, Medicare supplement is going to be the superior level of coverage, especially as you get older. We have people in their 80s, 90s, and they're going into Advantage plans, and that's just a disaster waiting to happen.
Right.
That's just terrible. But, the rule of thumb is that, we need to drive the bus on that situation. We're the experts. We know all the laws. We know what everything does. And that's what they're looking for. They want somebody to sort through all the paperwork and all the ins and outs. Tell me what's going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's going to be the best situation for me. And that's the way I do it.
Yeah, no, I agree because even though, yes, there's a good middle ground between giving them all the options and narrowing it down because they'll come across agents that only give them one option and they're not giving the whole picture about Advantage and supplemental. But then there is the mistake of giving them too many options, and then they are just so overwhelmed and paralyzed they just won't make a decision. They'll put it off,
Right.
But it is you as the professional to say, do such good discovery and ask really great questions and really dig deep so that you can say, what, basically narrow it down. If you were my family member, based on what you said, this is what I would do, this one, or do an A/B close. Make it very simple for them and not overwhelm them. But you have to take the reins on that and narrow it down and present that option or two options to them, and so that they can just make a decision. Because a lot of times they're just wanting to do what you tell them to do, or wanting to go based on your recommendation anyhow. So that's what they're looking for. So you may as well do that. Take the reins on it and take control, and make a really great recommendation for them that they're comfortable with.
But going back to the original topic, where we had this VA situation, there's so many different things that can come up with Advantage plans, and it gets confusing. Doctors, I mean, when it comes to like VA and Advantage plans, Stephen was telling me you can go to the VA if it's an expensive bill. Wait a minute, Humana is your primary. You got to go to them to pay the bill. We're not going to touch this, and then we're not going to pay your copay for you. So people don't think about that type of thing, and there's so many different variables. And with a Medicare supplement, they're standardized. They're the same thing. We know exactly what's going to happen. It's very simple. You don't have to worry about anything. Paperwork all gets done, usually by the hospital. But it's, for a new agent coming on, you have to realize, why did the government create this period? To give people an out, because they realize, a lot of people are going to get, hate to use the word suckered, but that's exactly what happens. It gives them an out in the beginning of the year to relook at their options. It's not going to be as crazy as it is in the fall, where it's just this feeding frenzy and nobody pays attention to anything. And gives them an option to relook their Advantage plan, maybe get another one, excuse me, or go back to original Medicare, which in some cases is better than going to an Advantage plan.
Yeah.
At least you're going to have the freedom to go where you want to go. So, there's a lot of different things that can come up.
Yeah. And it's adjusting, right, during this coming up enrollment period, it's just adjusting your mindset and being a little bit better, more attuned to listening to their needs, and finding a way to improve their situation, and having them realize, look, this is actually a little bit of a second chance you get. So let's take advantage of that. If that's the case, whether that be move from one lousy Advantage plan to one that's a little bit better, or having you move from Advantage back to original Medicare and restore those rights and just make your insurance that, much, much better. So,
and I will say, things for new agents coming on, you have to be very careful when you get to the end of these periods and you enroll them in a supplemental plan that has to be underwritten. You want to make sure that thing gets approved first before you cancel anything.
Yes, let's asterisk this date and time. This is so important what you're saying right now.
You get into the end of March, you're in the middle of March, and I sold them a supplemental, and they enroll them in a drug plan for April 1st, and it kicks out their Advantage plan. Oh, gee, the supplement got declined. Now they're just straight A and B only.
Right.
And you have to try to, get them something else that they might get approved for, or pay a much higher premium. And so it gets very dangerous towards the ends of those periods when you start making changes. Right. You don't want to leave people out to dry, and I'll always make sure that supplement is issued. Then you take the steps and get the Advantage plan canceled.
Right. Yeah, and so for agents out there, to be very clear, what Brad is talking about is if someone is going or using OEP to go from an Advantage plan back to original Medicare, you cannot go ahead and set up their prescription drug plan first and then submit the application for the supplemental, because the simple act of setting themselves up for a drug plan will kick them out of their Advantage plan, which they may not be able to go back into. So what you want to do is, if you have a client like that who wants to revert back to original Medicare and supplemental, submit the supplemental application first. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to make sure it is officially approved, because whether they're approved or not has no bearing on what they can and can't do with their supplemental, since those aren't communicated with Medicare directly. Then once they are approved for their supplemental, then after the fact, then submit the application for the prescription drug plan, because then you know they're safe and you won't ever be at a point of no return where they can't undo something, right? And you also have to be very clear to the client, don't go behind me and change sign up for a drug plan either. I had a gentleman do that. Thank goodness he got approved for a supplement, but I told him, I said, look, we're going to talk in a week. We'll have your Medicare supplement. Hopefully it'll be approved by then, but we'll check. And if so, then we will together shop a drug plan for you. He thought he was doing me a favor and making it less on me, and went ahead and signed up for a drug plan. I didn't smack him too much for it, because thank goodness, his supplemental was approved, but he really could have, done himself in if he hadn't been approved for that. Anyhow, so just make it clear, you as an agent, make sure you're doing it in that order, and also make it clear to your client, look, this is the reason why we're holding off on the drug plan, because we're not wanting to jeopardize any of your coverage right now. So you just have to know that yourself as an agent, and you also have to educate the client, because that is so, so, so important, because you can mess up a lot if you don't do it in that order.
Oh, yeah. And the cancellation dates are always the first of the month.
Mm-hmm.
So in January, it's always going to be a February 1st effective date.
Mm-hmm.
February, it's going to be a March 1st effective date. March is going to be April 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Termination date, effective date for the drug plan. So just remember that as far as
and then to be clear about that too, and actually I wanted to clarify for myself as well. So if you get an approval through the end of, well, I guess you would have to sign up for the drug plan to terminate the Advantage plan by the end of March. Is that right?
Well,
for an April 1st start date.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to be careful with your effective dates too. Like if you're at the end of January and you do a February 1st effective date on your supplement, and the thing doesn't get approved till in February, you got to move that effective date up, because the Advantage plan is not going to terminate until the first of the following month. So when you get towards the end of the month, it's you got to be careful with that too. Yeah. Unless they're squeaky clean and you can go with a company that's going to have an instant approval. Yeah, I mean, there's some caveats in there. But.
Yeah, a general rule I follow is I'd say I'll tell people the cutoff for the following month start date is the 15th of the month. If you can submit, because people will sit on it and they'll think about it. I said, look, if you want to submit it for example, like a January 1st start date, you need to apply no later than the 15th of December. Otherwise, we'll have to roll it out to February. Because it stresses out everyone. We're cutting it too close. You won't have your cards in hand. So you just want to automatically, I think that should be your first go-to as a good recommendation. And then if it's something where, for example, they have to start something like, for example, January 1, and you're 5 days before that, you have to kind of just really prep the client and say, look, I will try to get it approved. I cannot promise that. We will attempt to do it. For sure, you will not have your cards in hand, but if we can get it approved, it'll be backdated, yes, but know that there could be a little misdirecting of bills if you if you go to the doctor before the policy is issued. So you really just have to warn. But really, like I said, if you follow that general rule of, not making the cutoff the 15th of the month before for a policy start date of the following first, that's always been something that's worked out well for me. Very rare do I have issues with that kind of turnaround time. And of course, during AEP, you want to extend that, of course, but during the off season, that seems to be a good rule of thumb. So that's what I do. And I just, I try to stick to that with clients because, people who try to push like, on the 20th of the month and they're pushing me for it, they'll be the ones to complain and cry when it's not approved by the first of the month. So don't set yourself up for that.
I want to talk too about cancellation of Advantage plans because I have clients that don't have a drug plan, like this VA guy uses the VA for coverage. And he says, well, how do I cancel it? I said, you're going to need to do something in writing. If you call them to cancel, they'll forget they ever had that phone conversation. Use a fax, something with a timestamp, certified mail, whatever, to cancel that plan. Otherwise, it won't get canceled in time and you'll have that plan for the rest of the year. It's going to mess up everything.
That's true.
And I've got a couple other things with GI situations, canceling, select plans similar, they moved outside the coverage area, just like an Advantage plan that'd be losing coverage. These companies don't send out the letter until the plan is terminated. And that could be a few weeks after that by the time they get the letter. Like I have some that are January 1st, and I made it explicit to the client. This thing's not going to get approved by January, but it will be retroactive. You might get the paperwork second week in January. We'll get that over. You will be covered from the 1st, but it's not going to go into force until we get that paperwork. So very careful. I mean, people call Advantage plans to cancel. A few months into it, you'll have a Medicare supplement sold. 6 months later, they still, they go to the doctor. They still have the Advantage plan set up with Medicare.
Right.
Oh yeah, remember that phone call. Yeah. Always do the things in writing when it comes to Advantage plans, and some med sup companies require it in writing as well. But very important just to cover all bases, because these are things that come back to bite you later on. And you may not even realize what's going on until months down the road. And they've been paying for a supplemental plan that's not even in force because they've had this Advantage plan. And they got to get reimbursed and you get a charge back. And it's a lot of time on the phone. We talked about time management yesterday. And these are things that are very time consuming to get fixed. And
It's
a lot
true.
of egg on your face and so on.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's true. Actually, I feel like I have the record. Nobody's said that they beat me yet, which is I had a client from my previous agency. She had, we put her in a supplemental, moved her from one company to another. And I told her in writing and I told her over the phone more than once, now you have to cancel your current supplemental. She didn't do it. I called her. I happened to call her when I moved over here. She said, yeah, I think they've still been taking out that premium and all that old supplement. I said, did you ever call and cancel? Well,
I thought you were going to cancel that.
And so it turned out she had been double drafted for 2 years, and it took a little time. They were going to refund it for her, but it took time, out of my day to do it. And, that was money. She'll get it back, but, money that was being taken out of her account. But yeah, you're right. You have to, but that's why a lot of agents are only seasonal, because it's during AEP in the fall. It's easy to sell. That's the selling period. That's the big enrollment period. And it's easy. You don't even have to worry about cancellations because one Advantage plan will kick out the other. It's easy. If you want to sell year round, you have to be a really knowledgeable agent and you have to know about the little intricacies of OEP and going from one, like a supplemental or a Advantage plan to the other and drug plan and such, and know what has to be canceled and what does not, and make sure it gets done and be on top of it. But the weak are not up for it, but we are. So you just have to know that if you're going to sell year round, especially in OEP. So other than that, anything else to add?
I really don't. I don't know what anything else to discuss on this. Bottom line, just cover your bases. Don't think you have things completed and just move on. Always follow up with the client. When it comes to critical things like canceling their old policy with Advantage plans, I'll set an appointment, or send them an email. Did you get it canceled? Oh, so glad you called me. I forgot to do that. It's just that little extra thing that can save everybody, including yourself, and so many things can go wrong this time of year.
Oh yeah.
So we really have to be on our game, make sure we follow up all our clients, do everything right, get things in writing, and drug plans too. And they have one shot at a drug plan.
Mhm.
That's it. They can't, it's not like you can switch once to another Advantage plan and do it again like during AP.
Mhm.
You have one shot to do this. You can go back to another Advantage plan, a better plan, or you can go back to original Medicare and qualify for a supplement, go through underwriting to get a supplement and get a drug plan, one shot at a drug plan. So, interesting time of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Right.
really quickly to speak to the cancellation of it, a good tip and rule that I just have been following lately, and it's caused me less headache in the long run, which is when somebody is canceling something that they have to manually call and cancel or write and cancel, I'll put them on my schedule for the week after we submit the app, and I'll call them with the good news that they're approved. And I said, you know what, let's jump on the phone together and cancel it so we can make sure it gets done. And when we call and get a verbal okay, usually they'll give us a confirmation number that it was canceled, or they'll give us some kind of reference number that it was done, or I can get their name and employee number, whatever, stating that yes, we have documentation on our recorded line that it was canceled. But that has avoided so many headaches for me and my clients, and I'm just going to continue doing it because that little extra step may seem like you're taking yourself away from selling, but really it frees you up more in the long run, having to deal with.
Yeah, we actually have a
that.
Medicare Advantage enrollment template letter that I so and so wish to cancel my policy number, blah blah.
Mhm.
You can email that to the client, just fill in the blanks, send it over to wherever.
Mhm.
Hopefully they'll have the proper. I usually say call the place, find out where to send it, get the fax number. Don't look at any paperwork and just kind of willy-nilly send it.
Mhm.
Call the company, find out exactly where to send it, and then send it off. Get a confirmation, say the confirmation. Very important.
Yeah, I like that idea. It's smart. Any little tip to help make your life easier as an agent and to prevent any heartache for the client it's wonderful. So I just had a bright idea too, though. I would say that this particular dojo is going to be super helpful to the remote agents that are starting with us. I would say if any of the remote agents find that they have a great topic that they would like us to explore, if you guys, if this has prompted another question about something even further in depth into OEP, or you have a suggestion about a topic that would be helpful to you as a remote agent and want to know our input as tenured in-house agents, I think that would be a great idea to put it in the comment section of one of our dojos, and we would be happy to speak on it in depth and get your questions answered and dig and dive into it if you have a suggestion or a request for that. So I'd be happy to do that for sure. So, but other than that, this has been Victoria Lewis. Have a great day and say hi to your mom for me.